Hello and welcome to another episode of Steel First Speaks. Today we're covering the topic of how do I even TO, right? And this video is just generally going to be a bit of advice. People who've maybe never TO'd an event before, even for those of you who have, how to run a good event, how to keep it smooth, how to keep things going online, offline, all that kind of stuff. Okay? Start off with the basics. Obviously, if you're playing a Flesh and Blood TO event, you're going to organize it through Gem. You're going to log in there. You're going to hit create an event. There's various options. Set it up as whatever the event you're doing, armory thing. Send people the link. They're going to sign up. Every event has a unique identifier, which is animal plus adjective. That's all pretty straightforward. And I think once you've done it once, you're not going to have a problem. So I'm not really going to run people through that. It is a fairly straightforward system. People report their own results, or you do it for them. If both the players reported the same thing, it gets a green tick. It's easy to accept. If they haven't, you have to get in touch with them and find out what the actual result was. But let's talk more about practical advice for actually running an event, right? So, as a bit of a background, obviously, my name is Steelfer, Finbar, London-based Flesh and Blood player. I have organized and run events, both online and offline, for Flesh and Blood and various other card games, for 100, 200 people, month-long events, massive online events, regular event series, all those kind of things. And there's various things that I've learned in that period of time that I think are really useful for people to take on and take advice. So let's just run through a list of do's, things you should do. So the first thing I would always do for every event is run a fake round one. Put up a seating chart, tell everyone that you're just doing a fake round one, pair it, get everyone to go to their tables. If you're online, get them to go to their Discord rooms so you can make sure everyone's there. If you're playing in person, you can still do this. If you've had registration, people just registering and turning up, you can still do this. Get everyone who doesn't have an opponent after 5 minutes to come and tell you, and then pair the actual round one. Now, if you do this, it is very, very important that you make sure you say very loudly, very clearly to everyone that this is a fake round one, that you're just doing a seating, and that you'll be repairing soon. People will start to play their games. People might get irritated if you don't say it clearly enough. So make sure you say it very clearly. This is a fake round one. We're just doing a seating chart. Or do a separate seating chart with all the people you know are supposed to be coming, and just, put their names on a table and put it up for people to do. You don't have to pair it in Gem, but pairing it in Gem is useful because then everyone can see what their table is, go to it, check their opponents there as well, and it really kind of gets everything started. It is well worth the 5-10 minutes it takes to do this, even in person, because the last thing you want is a large amount of buys round one. Remember that the way that Flesh and Blood calculates strength of schedule is based on when your first loss was. So getting an automatic buy is actually very, very good for your strength of schedule and can greatly interact with the integrity of the event. So you don't want too many of those. You actually just want, if you have an odd number, you want one table with a buy. And it is a good idea just to reduce the amount of tables that are getting a buy round one and do that fake pairing. So I would always recommend that. I think it's brilliant. On to buys. So my second piece of advice is to be careful how much you interfere with buys. So if you have a lot of buys in round one, it is a good idea for that reason of strength of schedule to consider actually saying to people, look, a lot of people haven't shown up. We're going to cancel. We're going to drop everyone. We're going to repair. It is a thing. So you can just manually pair people together if they're missing an opponent, but this is where it gets a bit tricky because you have to find a way to do it in a random way. Because otherwise you might be letting in a bit of unconscious bias. So you might be putting your friend against, giving your friend a buy, without even realizing it. You might just pairing it and be like, okay, well, he can have the buy because I know he's running late, or, like all these things that can interfere with the actual sort of randomness of the event. And if you interfere with the randomness of the event, you interfere with the end result of the event, and you affect the outcome in a way that isn't, it affects the integrity of the event. So you can roll dice, you can pair up people who have got a bye. That is one way to handle it. Personally, I prefer to run a fake round one, ensure as many people as possible are there before you actively get into the buys. The other thing I would say is to think about your timers. It's very important. It's important that you give people ample time. Remember that in CC, people do have 5 minutes to sideboard before they start the round. Make sure, ideally, that people aren't starting to play before that 5 minutes has run out. Like, make sure it's clear that it's a separate timer, and that they should set, like, especially when you get into the more serious games, like after, say, round one, it's a good idea to set that timer and make sure people know it's a separate 5 minutes, that you're not actually supposed to start playing before that 5 minutes has run up. So that's just something to keep in mind. And also, it's important to set a reasonable amount of time for a game to finish after the round ends. Like, the rules say that people are allowed a final turn, but, if you think about it, how long does that final turn take? It doesn't take 10 minutes. It is perfectly legitimate as a judge to go to a table that is, not finished within a reasonable amount of time after time has been called, and just stand there and make sure that neither side is slow playing, that, things are going smoothly, and that both players realize that the entire tournament is waiting on them. I'm not saying that you should start pressuring them 2 minutes into that last turn, but after 5 or 10 minutes, it is perfectly reasonable to say to both players, look, you need to start hurrying up. I mean, you only have 4 to 5 cards. You only have a certain number of actions. It does not take 10 minutes to play one turn. And it's important to realize that it is okay for you as the TO to step in and say, look, I need you to finish faster. The next round has to start. And you've given them enough time to play a turn. So it's important to understand that it is reasonable to put a cap on that. Just because the rules say that you have to have a final turn, it doesn't mean that the players can spend 15, 20 minutes playing that final turn. It is reasonable to expect them to end. Another thing I would do, especially for online events, is post standings after every round. There are many times I have seen that players have entered wrong the results, and both players have entered the wrong result wrong. Okay? Or both players have entered the wrong result, basically. So I've said I won, but I've said that I've lost, and my opponent said that they won by accident, and then it's been entered wrong, and I haven't realised for 2 rounds because I thought I was on the right score and I was playing hard games, so I was like, everything's fine. And then I realised, wait a second, round 3 was entered wrong. If you post the standings after every round, players can check to make sure there's no issues. If an issue is found right after you pair the round, ask everyone to stop playing their games, cancel that pairing, fix it, and then repair, right? And fix it as quickly as possible. You can't fix something once the round has already happened or the next round has started. The integrity of the tournament has already happened. That player has already been... Like, for example, so if I misreport something in round 1 as a loss rather than a win, and then I come to in round 4 and say, actually, I won that game, every single game I played after that first round has been easier because I lost that first game. So it's not really fair of me, if I didn't catch it, to come and say, actually, you need to change my result. Really, things need to be caught when they happen, and that's why posting things like standings are important, reminding people to check their results to make sure everything is good. And ultimately, if they haven't checked it and something goes wrong and you're already into the next round, or half an hour of that round has gone by, that is unfortunately on the player themselves to have spotted and corrected the mistake. At an event, you are responsible for making sure your score is correct, and that you have reported correctly. And that's just important. You just kind of have to go with that. Ultimately, and I think this is kind of the biggest rule that a lot of new TOs get wrong, or they're a bit worried about, you kind of have to trust your judgment. Ultimately, something will go wrong. There'll be a mistaken ruling by a judge that no one will notice. Someone will have made a mistake in the game before their top cut match, and their opponents only just realised they made an illegal play. Something will always go wrong. Just try and resolve it as smoothly as possible. You can't fix everything. Talk to the people involved, see if they can be resolved amicably. If it's their mistake, a lot of the times it is just tough luck if they've let it go by without saying it at the time. Like, if your opponent made a mistake and you didn't realise, you are both responsible for maintaining that board state. You can't And I've seen this happen at a tournament where there was a new TO. Someone came, so both players had just started shuffling their decks together, basically, to clean up. And then the person said, wait a second, you couldn't have done that. You shouldn't have won. And the judge made them unshuffle their decks, re-establish the board state, and then try and continue playing. But obviously both players had hidden information in their hands, so that was crazy. And also it took about 20 minutes to rewind the game and make that decision. Realistically, what should have happened in that stage is the person who was given the win should still be given the win, unless it was deemed that that person had cheated, or that something like for example, if we're both on one life and I do something weird that means I win, and no one catches it, there is a valid argument to say that based on the situation, maybe the win should go to the opponent, depending on the level of mistake that I made. If it was just a simple mistake and both players shuffled up, and my opponent, it's like, say, if I do something and my opponent says, okay, cool, and concedes and shuffles their deck in, right, they have still conceded, and it feels bad, and, maybe, it feels bad, but ultimately I was in a position where I could have won, something went wrong, and my opponent shuffled up. We can't fix that. If you think it was borderline, you make them roll a dice for the win. But if you think the person was going to win anyway, it is fine to just let the result stand and say to the opponent, look, spend more time thinking about it before you shuffle in everything. And the other rule I think a lot of people need to understand is that punishments do vary, even within the same event, based on where the games are being played. A lot of TOs, and I've seen this happen quite a few times, they try and enforce the rules of the game as strictly at the top tables as they do at the bottom tables. Now, it is important that rulings at the bottom tables are accurate and that people are given accurate understandings of what went wrong, what happened. Things are still fixed, rewound if needed be, but it's still important to understand that your punishment for someone at a bottom table is not going to be a warning. It's not going to be an intellect penalty. It's not going to be, it's not going to be any of the more drastic things that you might use on someone who is expecting to get into the top cut or who should know better. If you're at the lower tables where people haven't been winning, it is okay to just be like, look, this is how you fix it, and let them go and say, please don't do that again. Obviously, the second you think someone's cheating or something's going on, there has to be something else done. But for the most time, you just need to say, look, this is what's going on. And also, things like mispairing that we've talked about. If a mispair at a table 30 or a table like that isn't going to make the top cut is not the same thing as a mispair at table 2. You're not necessarily going to cancel around and repair everything for someone on a 2-3 or 2-4 score if they accidentally misreported one round as a win rather than a loss. If they were already that far down, you're probably just going to let the rest of the event continue on as normal. And that's kind of a good bit of this advice here. Is a lot of what you do is make rulings that let the event continue on as normal as much as possible, without sort of worrying about, without sort of, stressing the minutiae where possible. Things will always go wrong. You can just make an event run smoothly as long as the rules are respected, and mostly accurate, or as accurate as possible. Even judges get things wrong, and as long as the majority of the tournament is integral. So on to our don'ts. So these are kind of big, right? So the first thing I would say is it is perfectly fine to play in your own event if you are a TO, depending on the size of the event. During the pandemic, we had one person trying to run a 140-person event and play in it and judge it, and that doesn't work. You don't have the time. Running an event takes time. It takes energy. Running an event for that many people takes more. You cannot run an event of that size and also TO it, which is why there are also separate judges. Now, there's two reasons. The first thing is, if you're a good player and you are in the finals, you cannot judge yourself in the finals. Do not try and judge yourself, right? If you are getting into a high tier event, you need a second judge who is going to step in for the games that you are playing, right? Okay, so that's the first thing. So if you're the TO, you probably shouldn't be running your own event if it's a certain size. If it's less than 40 people, you're fine. Play in the event, do whatever. Just have a friend who also knows the rules, who's going to make the decisions in your games. Don't be the person judging yourself. That's not, that's not a recipe for success. Your opponent will never, ever believe you fully. There'll always be a question mark in their mind as to whether or not you just said the thing to help you win. It's just the nature of the beast. Get someone else to step in and judge your tournaments. Do not be afraid to play in your own events if they're small. When they start to get larger, there is just too much admin to play in your own event, and you just need to suck that up. And, that's why judges get special prizes for doing the job. That's why, TOs, and there's people champion mats to give to TOs who work hard in the community to keep things going. There's lots of things going on to reward TOs for running events. A lot of the time, TOs are store owners. They get paid in customers. There's lots of other things going on. So TOs don't necessarily need to play in their own events. Smaller events, fine. Larger events, unfortunately, sit out. Focus on running the event, making it go to time, making everyone have a good time. And do not, because I've seen this happen, do not judge your own rulings, right? Get someone else in, preferably, another player, not your best mate, to come in, make a ruling, preferably another judge who's got some sort of accreditation to come in and say, hey, no, this is how it goes, right? Don't make judge calls on your own games. It gets messy. Again, smaller tournaments, larger tournaments, it's a big difference. But judges can play in a 60-person event. That's fine. This weekend, we had a 60-person event. We had 2 judges there, and it was fun. When a judge had a call for his game, he called the other judge. When someone else had a call, they just put up their hand, and one of the judges who was playing responded when they had a second. So, that works fine. It is okay to be relaxed about that kind of thing. Just make sure that you are promoting fairness. It is important also to not try and fix everything when someone complains. A lot of the time, things that go wrong are individual errors, or errors when it's the responsibility of the players to spot their mistake at the time. And if neither of them did, then that's kind of where you are, really. And it's important that you draw a hard line under the rules as well. You have a judge, you have a TO. You can be wrong, and it is fine to be wrong in a ruling and fix it later. You should look things up. You should consult a judge. Even judges get things wrong. It is fine to come back later after a tournament and say, actually, that ruling was wrong, but the tournament's still finished, and maybe it wasn't a huge deciding factor. You just got to kind of keep going, and it's just one of those things that does happen. Rules will be wrong. You can't fix it. You have to keep going. And I mean, what else to say? We're all waiting for Tales of Aria to come out. I'm super excited. This link is coming up. I'm obviously going to do speculation videos soon about all of the stuff that could be going on. And that's it, really. Yeah. The only other thing to say, really, is just, as a TO, you are kind of responsible for the quality and the, the standards of your event. Don't drop to the levels of the players. If someone's insulting you or being rude to you, it is on you to calm down and walk away. Just say no. We had an incident that people are talking about on Facebook. I don't know whether it's real or not, where someone accused the TO of cheating and he was playing in his own event, and the TO was threatening him because the guy was insulting him, and that's really not on. You've kind of got to think about your behavior there. It doesn't matter if you're in the right. If someone is causing hassle or threatening your players, you need to ban them from the event. If you're the one doing it, you have to have a long conversation with yourself about why you're TOing events. Ultimately, it is on you to de-escalate and to sort out those situations. You can't get in a situation where you're threatening your players, because they have no recourse. They basically can leave, and then it's a hostile environment and they can never come back. They have no recourse to you threatening them. You are supposed to be their protection against people who are being aggressive. You're supposed to be the one creating a safe space. And if someone is getting tilted after a game and insulting, it is okay to say to that person, look, I think you need to go away from this tournament, or to kick them out, or to say you need to take a time out and calm down. But it's not you just have to be the level-headed person in the room who's going to sort things out, not the person adding fuel to the fire. So I'm not going to go too into that. I don't know the details on it. I think it's just worth saying that, if situations occur where you disagree with someone, as the TO, it is on you to just walk away and just, calm the situation down, make the fairest ruling you can. And if you can't, if you're involved in a situation, if you're the one who is playing a game and someone's calling you a cheat or something like that, is you get the coolest person in the room who's not you or the judge or a player, just get the coolest level-headed person in the room and you just say, look, can you come and talk us through this? Because there are people in communities who are more calm than you are, who will talk you through a rough situation, right? I know at least 3 or 4 people I could just say to them, look, we're having a disagreement. Can you just come over and talk to us both about it? Because we're getting a bit worked up. And help get them involved. And most of the players I know, they'd step in, they'd be like, okay, what happened? They talk to you about what happened. And then you'd use that to de-escalate the situation. There's many tools for like walking away from that. Okay, anyway, thanks everyone for listening. I hope you found this really interesting. Obviously, there's a lot of events to run. There's a lot of great stuff going on. If you like this video, please hit subscribe. I do try and do videos once a week, but I have been absolutely swamped with work recently, so couldn't do anything about it. But I will get back to my cadence once the tail spoils start.